Oconee County's Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee. Today is May 22nd, 5:30 p.m. We need to approve the minutes of our May 8th meeting.
Second.
Any corrections, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We basically need to pick up where we left off at our last meeting. If you recall, at our last meeting, we committed to funding the sheriff's SROs and the assistant for our coroner, Mr. Carl Addis. That left a couple of items that we still need to seriously consider. The additional fire truck, the High Falls ADA upgrades, and the Westminster Magistrate. I also at the time handed out a request from our local emergency planning committee for some clerical assistance. I hope you read that information, and I'm open to discussing whether we should consider funding this position or not as well. Does anybody have an opinion regarding the local emergency planning committee?
I can't remember what that amount was again.
I don't think we had an amount. They were just requesting some clerical assistance. The amount would probably need to be determined by us. This is definitely a secretarial position that they're looking for.
Is there a possibility that the deputy coroner gets funded by the state, that we could use that additional funding towards that and make that that would give you...
That would give us some additional funds there. Here's the deal, though. The state hasn't really committed so far to funding anything, and they actually put off their committee meetings and conversations, and they don't plan on returning a budget till June 27th. Talk about waiting till the last minute. So I'm a little hesitant to make too many assumptions. Now, I've spoken to, people in the Association of Counties and people at ACOG to get a feel for what we can feel safe about and what we possibly should not. They're confident that both the Senate and the House will pass a budget that includes the added monies towards the South Carolina retirement plan. They're very confident about that. They didn't really have much of an answer for me as far as the deputy coroner, the assistant to the coroner, whether that was going to come across or not. So that kind of leaves us.
That would give us about $35,000 in order to do that if that worked out the way that we're seeing it.
We're hoping it would work out. I have a general question, and I don't know, do we have a clerical position that floats amongst county departments when they need assistance?
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware of, that we check in and see if anybody that is floating that we can maybe utilize, but I don't know of any one person right now.
Okay, well, that might be something to look at as well.
Madam Chair. Charlie, don't you have a position that you didn't fill? When y'all moved from, moved the emergency services, wasn't there a lady retired, we didn't replace?
Yeah, and again, we're hearing of this for the first time. This position was a staff position within our organization up until the end of last budget year. With the layoffs that occurred, and we were the 6 additional staff members that we were provided last year, we were $25,000 short of being able to fully fund those 5 positions, and that's where the money come to fund the 6, to finish off funding the 6 firefighter, was this part-time clerical position that was within our department. So last July 1st, with all the restructures that happened through county government positions, this clerical position was eliminated to make the 6 firefighters that were approved last budget year happen. This LEPC meets quarterly. It is an industry, majority of it is commercial and industry. that make up this committee. So again, it's clerical functions that support it. Attempted the best that we could to absorb those among existing staff, but again, it was a position that we had to move the funding to finish out the 6 firemen that were approved last year to make those happen. So.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's do this. As of when I walked out the door this afternoon, Westminster has not got any plans or drawings for National's office, no projections of anything. They're just asking for $500,000. If you don't have any plans, you don't know where you go, yet you need the office, until they can come to us with a plan, we can't just throw the money up in the air and say, well, is there, we could use some of that to fund what Charlie needs. And for the life of me, I've talked to several builders, $500,000 for an office, that's a lakefront house with a covered boat dock, and that's according to the realtors I've talked to. So we're kind of committing money, and there's no plan for the money. We might as well be committing money to say we're going to build our own launching pad to go to the moon. If you don't have a plan, if you come to us with a plan and say, look here, we got the property here, we got engineered drawings of what it's going to look like, and we got this, and we want to know if you'll fund. Then you say, okay, so we do that. But right now, we've got $500,000 sitting there. Yeah, they need a magistrate's office.
The thing is, we don't have a $500,000 sitting there. We
Yeah,
are
but
going to include that
everybody wants to commit to $500,000 that we don't have.
in debt service, not in general fund money. So that would have been just a minuscule millage increase in debt service money, not a millage increase for general fund. Either way, I've received a couple of emails suggesting potential properties that can be used in Westminster as an alternative. And I'd like to suggest that perhaps Mr. Martin and I, Mr. Martin being some fresh eyes, can go on a little field trip soon and take a look.
We can do that, just let you know when.
Thank you. So let's just hold off on that. But no, there is no $500,000 for the magistrate, and that was intended to be paid for using debt service, not general fund money.
You're not saying correctly, because it keep coming up in the budget, we need $500,000 going on here.
So anyway, just put that on hold. We still have another budget meeting coming up next week. I wanted to also address, Mr. McCall, you were looking at, you had suggested at the last meeting that we take a closer look at our fee schedule.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I'm not done researching what other counties charge and all, so I'm not ready to report back on that. But if you'd like to chime in.
No, you're not in the same boat. You got to go down to it, and what I'm finding is that we're paying a lot. We seem to be paying a lot. We got copy machines here, copy machines there, copy machines there. And if you go through that fee schedule, we're paying over and over we ought to have a central place where you go, you want a copy, it goes to a central place.
Madam Chair, after the last meeting, we did talk with the department heads. We do have some fee changes, and we do have some comparison with the surrounding counties.
Okay.
Anderson, Greenville, and Spartanburg. So we can hand these out to you at this time.
Well, that's good, and you'll save me finishing what I started.
You'll see the ones that are in red are the ones with the increase.
Okay.
And the second handout is the comparison page.
And if I'm not mistaken, you'll also notice on the comparison page, we're pretty close to everybody else on most items. Maybe just a little bit different, but not a whole lot.
Rick, the one thing I noticed on here, we're charging less for copies than what all the rest of the stores are charging. That kind of stood out to me.
Okay, that's something we should look at.
And as far as I'm concerned, tattoo parlor fee, we missed, it ought to be 100,000, not 1,000.
It's still a business way, regardless if you take part in it. I think that's an unfair assessment on any kind of business to state that.
Let me tell you something, right now,
Okay, easy.
I was being facetious because of the tattoo. Now, if you want to carry on, I'm in no mood for it.
You just shouldn't call out any kind of business. That's all I'm stating. And some of the changes in the fees that I would definitely disagree with would be and I know we charge less for that on the animal control, but it is one of those things that I think we definitely do a good job on, and I know I'd hate to add in to, we don't do enough vaccines and dewormers and heart tests. I would hate for that to do that, and that definitely serves a great population, and based on everything that I've heard from, that pet group during some of the discussions that we've had here, I would hate to increase anything in there. I mean, we've talked about lowering adoption fees and everything to help out with that. And I know we've ran several things. Sheriff Crenshaw has talked about that. It's been very, very successful. So I definitely don't want to increase anything in there. I would more look at, looking at some decreases in there to help move animals more than what we do. And,
Madam Chair, I agree with Mr. Davis on that, because that is, we could probably, with the copy fees, we could take the money from the copy fees and use that to the heartworm and other fees. We could use up those fees to offset that. Is that something we do legally or not?
what is the copy fees? What is that for?
Like when you go down and get a map or, it's listed in there different places, and we're charging somewhat less than they are at Staples, the post office, or wherever else they got copy machines. And one of my ideas was we're renting all these machines, everybody's got their own budget for copy machines, and of course the taxpayers paying for it. We could, send it by, since everybody's hooked up with computers now, we could send it down to you will pick your copy up as you go out the door, a copy center, and we could up the fee for the copies to whatever the industry, whatever the postal or whoever's charging, whatever the industry out there charging. And we could possibly use those fees to go back on the vaccines, the dewormer, and the other stuff, and roll those back, especially the heartworm, because we got so many mosquitoes up here. Maybe we could do that. And I don't even know whether that's legal for us to shift money around like that.
Madam Chair, it's not a matter of legality of shifting money. I don't think you're talking truly about shifting money. It's the overall income that the county may derive from various fees charged. So in theory, you're talking about charging more for copies. I don't know that I've come across copies more than 25 cents a page, but it's been a while since I had to pay for copies out of Staples or out of Kinko's or whatever. So maybe they're more than 25 cents a page for a standard size copy. But right, the overall income, we're looking to increase the fees, and the money garnered to the county by fees, and does not have to have as much of a tax increase. Then if you make that up with copies and don't make that up with animal control fees, then that's a viable solution. But I don't know that it's as much money that you might think is gonna come in.
What do we make?
Yeah, what's the projection that we're gonna make based off of, how many
What do we
copies
make
a
now?
year do we sell?
I'd have to go run those analysis. It is very minimum. I
Like
would say-
less than 10,000?
I would say less than 5,000.
Okay. So it's a service, it's what we're really offering to our citizens more than anything. 90% of the people that partake in that, are they county citizens?
Developers with it.
That sounds correct.
Those first.
Ish, call it 70%. So 30% is outside the county wanting a document.
Those
So-
first fees that you see there, those sides is just a plain, stick it in there and copy it. So under the GIS is where you're gonna get to your map quality and the higher rates.
Is our copy machines leased, or do we own them?
They're leased,
So,
but we pay no lease. The only thing we pay for is the paper, and then we pay, I think, a penny per click.
so 30 machines versus 10, it would be, as long as that, whatever that county is what we pay for.
Correct.
Okay.
So Staples, I'm on their website right now. 1 to 100 black and white copies. It goes down the more you get. It's 8.5 cents per page for a black and white copy.
Oh, how about one page? If you go in there and you say, I want a copy
It's 8.5 cents per page.
per page.
Color starts at 42 cents for pages 1 through 50 per page.
Where's our, I know you may not have it broken down, all of our fees, do you have what the total revenue for that? I know it's somewhere in there, but is it in the total revenue for all of our fees? Is that in the,
It was in the original budget document that was handed out, the purple book. And it was broken out. Charges for services, license permits and fees, that's page 11. For instance, you go down to moving permit fees, which on the fee handout, I believe it was $50.
okay.
So $20. Then we have, we've received $15,000 to $18,000 a year on those. Now, all of these are not broken out individually like that. For instance, the building permits, they're all in just the building codes. That would include electrical, plumbing, everything. Whereas some of the other counties that you'll see on that comparison list, they have those broken out separately, but ours is all inclusive.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, didn't we do an increase on the building permits a few years ago? Because I'm just looking at, I mean, obviously revenue is looking,
Mr. Carroll, I spoke with him Sunday, and most everything is in line with all the other counties.
perfect.
He said that he could go up on the square foot portion of the equation that they use. I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
building permits.
But it'd be a
He
minimal
said he
again.
could go up on the square footage amount.
At our previous meeting, we also talked about the airport fees, so there's no red ink on that side.
On this first page of the comparisons, you'll see where Mr. Garrison sent in the Pickens, Anderson, and Spartanburg airports for their call-out fees. It looks like we're higher than a couple and then less than Spartanburg. The ramp fees are about the same, ours are a little higher, the same as Pickens.
But is that the only thing we should be taking into account? We have a long waiting list for our T-hangers.
Well, basically, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have contracts with the T-hangers.
We do have leases in place with the T-handlers. Obviously, there's those amounts to be set in the term of those leases. I don't know how many terms are getting ready to come up or not. The hanger fees are down at the end. And it looks like, I don't know if it's apples to apples, but Pickens and Spartanburg, theirs are higher. So they're about on par 80 with Anderson. But what I can do is find out the term dates on those. And also we need to just see when Pickens and Spartanburg speak of corporate, which is double, at least our big, I guess our biggest hanger, which is hanger E, see if those are similar. So I'll check with Mr. Garrison to see what the term out date is for those hanger leases, and then see if we're looking at the same type of hanger when we're comparing a corporate hanger at Pickens and Spartanburg.
Okay. Yes.
On certain, I think twice last year, we had a rent of a portable tower, portable tower from the airport. Was it twice, Rick, or more than twice?
I think it may have been on 2 different occasions for some of the home ball games.
Yeah, that came with, we had to also rent controllers to go in the tower.
That is correct.
We need to look at how we're gonna recover the cost of that. 'Cause they said it was just jammed in, they had no place to put it, they had jets pushed almost together.
That's something that we'll talk with Ms. Garrison about. Kind of see how the process works and see what we can do on some numbers for that also.
Because Mr. Garrett did a great job out there, I mean.
Yes, sir.
And if we, I talked before, I said, well, what is it, how much more, because we get paid by landing and takeoffs. It's what the FAA looks at, give us money. At some point, right now, the nearest control tower is Anderson. Only because the military used that for base in World War II. But we could very well, Oconee County could very well be, this could be a huge airport.
Thank you, sir.
So going back to the red ink on the park rentals, what can we expect to see as far as increased revenue by changing these numbers?
You're talking about the PRT, the Parks Recreation.
Yeah, building reservations at the park, full day only,
Do
100.
you want to speak on that?
In looking at our fee structure, the $100 is really, right now you can rent a building for half a day. What we were proposing, and this was not really a fee increase, it was an operational issue for us, is going to a full day rental only versus half a day. What that does is it requires our staff in the middle of the day to try to clean the shelter for the next rental. So we feel like the numbers are going to be the same, but we have absolutely skyrocketed in our customer base. Our numbers are up, our data is up, over 60%. Our revenue is over $200,000 increase over the last couple of years. So we're challenged operationally, and so this was more of an operational proposal than it was a fee for a purpose of bringing in more fees.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments about our fee schedule?
Yeah, on the back to the recreation building, was called to set up, we were charging, $275 and then full day only $450. And Love's Call, what does that, Phil, what does that mean? Is that a,
What we do is when we do like full day picnics for some of our industry partners, our manufacturing plants will come out and do a company picnic. We don't want them going online and just renting one building. We want them to call us and set it up so that we can make sure we've got plenty of space for them.
what is that, how much do we charge? Are we gonna charge more for that?
We do, we charge a combination of multiple buildings so that they've got enough space and green space to have their picnic.
Oh, so that's why they just say, let's call them set it.
Yes, sir. And it'll be the combination, of the rec building plus the pavilion plus the green space. Normally that runs about $400 for the day. And a lot of that depends on, it's a custom price based on how many people they're gonna have and how much space they're gonna have. And it's hard to make that a fee because every industry might want something a little bit
Yes.
different.
But you are covering yourself as far as, it's not costing you money, cost your and staff time and everything. You're not going in a hole with this.
Well, PRT we're not an enterprise fund. We are supplemented throughout the year. So we're not, it's not like the quarry where we make more than we.
I'm trying to figure out a way to pay for heartburn medicine right now. So that's what I'm getting at.
I don't know if I can help you with that, Mr. McCall.
Thank you.
It does look like our hangar fees are lower than the other counties. But I would say, it's my opinion, that if we're going to increase those, the revenue needs to go into a fund to build more hangars, not to subsidize other parts of our government. I think we obviously have a huge demand for new hangars. And if we increase these fees, they need to go towards paying for more hangars.
With the airport, I think fees should pay for whatever
Right.
they're being charged for, so I think they need to stay with the airport, and as time goes by, they can decide what they need and how they need to spend it. It'll be nice to get the airport to a point where it is self-sufficient up the rock touring.
It's close now, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty close.
I mean, you got an excellent director out there.
Okay, any other comments on those fees?
We had, I guess, the marriage proposal going from 10 to 25, I mean, that just seems, I don't know what we get off of that, but I just was trying to look at, I don't really see, other counties are charging $25 to get married. Look at there, we made, yeah.
A lot of those fees that you
We
see.
get discounts for multiple marriages.
That you see are, safety.
Okay.
The waiting period's longer, right, in Georgia?
If that's staying with the times, then I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with that.
Now, a lot of the fees are told, the state tells them what they can charge.
Well, if we increased it to 25 from 10, we're currently budgeting probate judge marriage certificates, $6,000. So we get an additional 6 times what, 2.5? So
There's your worm fee.
15,000 total.
We got it.
You ain't got it.
If that's staying with the times, I don't have a problem with that.
So that would be around 6,000. Maybe that an additional $15. 9,000.
Not 90.
9,000.
9,000. Yeah, 9,000 on top of 6, we get 15, yeah.
Okay, does that take care of our fees then?
The rock crusher fees, can you kind of go through that, what we're entailing in that with the new equipment?
Yes, sir, on the fees for the quarry, most of the fees have gone up $1, other than on products such as dirt, it just went up 50 cents. And I think maybe some of the smaller items, just went up 50 cents. And that is trying to get some revenue coming in when we do purchase a new plant, that would have some revenue to pay for the first payments on the plant. I think, well, we anticipate the sales will also be there, so I don't think the fee increase is going to be too dramatic at this time, knowing we get ready to get an upgrade at the rock.
We're still way below what everybody else charges.
Yes, sir, to the, as we call them, to the common citizen, if you go to another quarry outside of Oconee County, and you just want to buy a truckload, we're way under those prices. But we do not offer discount prices for volume like some of the other quarries do. Some of the quarries, the more you buy, the cheaper you get it. With us, at Oconee County Quarry, we'll sell it to an individual just like we do the biggest customer they have. We do not distinguish in price.
But we're selling everything we can make.
Yes, sir, we are.
So that means we're successful.
Yes, sir, they're very successful. But as far as the fees, I think they're pretty adequate, and I think you'll see that there'll be, it'll be a good amount of income coming into the operation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just handed out to the council members our advertising agreement with the Journal that's expiring June 30th. I'd like us to go over that. The several pages worth of advertising commitments does not include our legal ads for our public hearings, for delinquent taxes and those types of notices. This is just the fluff. And the fluff adds up to $108,400 a year. I'd like a motion to direct our county administrator to renegotiate this contract.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss this. If you look at page 1, we're paying for $2,000 a year worth of 2 full pages for the Westminster Apple Festival. I don't have a problem with advertising for the Westminster Apple Festival, but I think half a page would be sufficient. Mountain Lakes Visitor's Guide, I have no problem with that. Walhalla Oktoberfest, against 2 full pages for $2,000. That can probably be cut in half to half a page. Graduation section, I certainly don't have a problem with that. Walhalla Mayfest, $2,000, 2 full pages. That can be cut into half a page. Oconee County Progress Edition, not even sure what that is, that we need to advertise 2 full pages for. Seneca's 4th of July, 1 full page for $1,000, that can be cut in half. Oconee County Chamber Directory, I don't have a problem with that. Clemser's Visitor's Guide, I don't have a problem with that. Next page, Celebrate Oconee, $18,000. We need to look closely at what exactly we're advertising for that. We don't really know. Next page, monthly ads for animal shelter adoption, $12,000 a year. I have no problem with that. I think that is valuable. I think it pushes the animals. Oh, I'm sorry. Here. Next page, newspaper ROP advertising. ROP stands for Run of the Press. 60 pages of advertising throughout the year for $40,000. These ads are reserved for administrative purposes. County may promote economic development, school district, recycling, government, contracts, etc., etc., etc. You have the rest of it in front of you. I think that should be cut at least in half. Next page, Upstate Living Magazine, $7,000, 2 full pages each issue. I don't see that we need 2 full pages each issue. And this last item is really disturbing. $11,400 a year for ads in Keowiki's Scuttlebutt. Keowiki is a private community. Their Scuttlebutt is a private newsletter. I can see on occasion we might need to advertise something in there, like when we had the issues with the Zika virus and whatnot. But just to blanketly advertise, whether we need it or not, $11,400 per year, I think that's excessive in a private newsletter. So the total adds up to $108,400. We can easily fund our SRO from some of this. So let's renegotiate this contract, please.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Why is it only one newspaper? Why is it not Kiwi Courier? Why is it not other papers that are widely circulated in this area? Why is it not Northland's Cable or other cable companies of media access?
Well, that goes back to our previous discussions on trying to distribute what we do need to advertise amongst the various media. When I requested a copy of this contract, Ms. Brock has suggested to me that she helped us create a new, advertising distribution of our advertising fees. So, but we just talked about this very recently, so that's not been completed yet. So that definitely takes.
This is not the only advertising we do. I mean,
Of course not.
This is.
We do a
so,
ton of
I mean,
advertising.
I was gonna say, we do advertisement all over, Coney County with several other carriers, but.
Right, but
We
we need
gotta
to look at the totality of it. We need to look at our other contracts, but this was the one she provided to me right now. And this is the one that's due to expire very soon, just in time for our new fiscal year, so it's time to renegotiate.
When do the other ones expire?
I don't know, I haven't been provided with any.
But you requested all of them?
I'm hoping to get all of them.
But did you request all of them?
No, I haven't requested all of them yet.
Okay, so
but
you
I
just
asked-
requested this one?
I asked for some kind of documentation to show me what we were advertising. This is the first thing I received, okay? When I spoke to Ms. Brock, she said she would like to create for us some sort of a new advertising array. I'm not sure how that's done, so that's something that needs to be looked at.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I talked to the Kiwi Courier, they get a drop in the bucket, absolutely nothing.
Well, I don't know that yet, so that needs to be established.
That's what the editor and chief told me.
And that's fine, but I don't know the dollar amount of it in the bucket, so we will look
I'd like
into
to
it.
hear from Northland's Cable.
No, I don't want to hear from anybody just right now. I just presented this because it's due to expire, and we need to look at our other contracts, if we have other contracts. If you noticed, our contracts are not signed, they're not dated. We've requested a signed copy, the Journal could not provide it. But yet, Ms. Brock told me that we have been following the letter of this agreement pretty much to the letter. So,
Madam Chair, I'd make a recommendation that at our next budget meeting, which is what, the 29th, that we invite all those advertisers that we pay money to. So if we have a question of what is this for, what is that for, that they can respond to that.
I don't have a problem with inviting whoever, these are open
That
meetings.
way, I know Mr. McCall, I guess, was somebody for Northland Cable here. Mr. McCall?
Yes.
So if we're wanting people to talk, then let's just invite them all that we have a contract with, and if we've got questions with what we're doing, or if they've got concerns with how we're advertising, I think that's a good time to do that.
I would assume most of our advertisers receive a contract on a budget year cycle, since we operate on a fiscal year budget cycle.
Well,
So I would assume that the other ones.
representative is here, do we have a contract with y'all?
Dick Mavrum, WGOG. Madam Chairman,
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, that's fine. Madam Chairman, I apologize. I don't handle the money at the station, so I can't answer that question. But certainly, I
I'll
guess.
talk to the general manager, I was just teasing.
Oh, okay.
I also think if we're going to benchmark our other fees, I think we ought to benchmark these fees as well, and compare apples to apples. So what does Anderson County pay? What does Pickens County pay? What does Greenville County pay? Now, obviously,
Greenville County would not quite be an apples to apples
Sure,
comparison.
sure, excuse me. Well, but we can figure out based on their total budget and then back that number off. So if their budget's 5 times what ours is, are they paying 2 times what we're paying in advertising? Are they paying 5 times? Then they would be in line from a ratio standpoint. Or Pickens County. Pickens County is very similar, similar size. Also, I'm curious to know what all advertisers, the market that they hit, how many people, I mean, this is a business, right? We're trying to inform the public of what's going on, so.
Sure,
So-
but the question is, if you, let's say we put in an ad on behalf of Waconia County in the Westminster Apple Festival newsletter or whatever, can our message can we not get our message across with a half-page ad rather than a full-page ad? We have squeezed our budget to the max. We have squeezed Pine Street to the max. We've eliminated positions for crying out loud, and yet we're advertising to the tune of $108,400. How do you explain that to people that you've laid off? That's my point. I'm not saying not do it. I'm saying not do it to that extent. Okay? If we're doing a full-page ad, we can get our message across in a half-page ad and save a little bit of money for the taxpayer. That's all I'm asking. And there's some things I wholeheartedly agree with, like the monthly ads for the animal shelter adoption. I wouldn't want to cut those back because they really fill those up with pictures of, cats and dogs that are waiting to be adopted. So I certainly don't have a problem with that. And when you ask people if they remember seeing stuff, they remember animal shelter adoption ads. They hardly remember any of the rest of this. So I was looking for impact as well. I also don't believe we should be advertising in a subdivision's private, newsletter with taxpayer money. That's ridiculous.
How many people does that hit? How many potential subscribers?
I don't know how many full-time residents there are there. I really don't know.
I mean, all of these, whether we advertise in any publication, you usually have to pay for it,
Oh, of course.
except for the tabloids that are issued, the guides. But any publication, whether it be the Kiwi Courier or the what's the other one? The Journal.
Westminster News.
The Westminster News, the Greenville News, those you pay to receive all the same. So I mean, people are paying. I don't know. Do people get the Scuttlebutt for free in the Kiwi Key, or do they pay to
They
receive
do. I
it?
don't think they pay to receive it. I think that's just a newsletter that goes out to the residents.
I personally don't have a problem with paying if we're reaching our intended audience. What I would be concerned about is if we're paying money and not achieving the result that we're seeking.
Okay, but when I've spoken to Ms. Brock, who handles a lot of our advertising, she didn't hesitate to tell me that half the time she doesn't have anything to put in, but yet we're still paying for it. So to me, that's a big problem. Think about it, 1 full page monthly per issue. So, how much do we need to advertise?
Let's have all of the next meeting, and I guess y'all still had some kind of, y'all had a motion and a second, so before we get off on that, I guess we're still in discussion of that. I mean, we've got
We're
to,
discussing.
that to allow those advertisers to come up and speak, all of them.
I don't have a problem with that, but I still think, regardless of what they tell us, that this particular contract is excessive. I'd like to look at the other contracts, and we can make the same assessment based on, our discussion. We do have a motion and a second to direct our administrator to renegotiate this contract.
But when you say it's excessive, what are we comparing it to as to the other contracts? How many people does this reach? What are we paying per subscriber?
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm just
It does
looking,
matter.
I mean,
no,
it's a business decision.
what I'm looking at is, can we get our message across in less space? And I think the answer to that is clearly yes. Do you recall what the Westminster Apple Festival Oconee County ad looked like? Obviously not. It didn't leave an impression, did it? Do you recall what the animal adoption ads look like?
I don't even know what any of these ads are for. What are they, that's my question is, you're saying it's excessive based on the numbers that are listed here, but what are we, what does the ad look like? Do we know what we're paying for?
Well, most of the time, people can't even tell you what they've seen that Oconee County had advertised in some of these publications. But almost everybody can describe to me the animal shelter adoption ad. Virtually everybody I've spoken to can describe that. They look at it, they look at the cats, they look at the dogs, they remember some old pets they've had that look like them. Everyone that I've spoken to, I've received those comments. So clearly some of the advertising is very beneficial. And from what I've seen, for instance, in the animal shelter adoption ads, they do need that kind of space, the full ad, the full page, because they put in lots of pictures in there. But some of these others, I think we can get by with much less. All I'm saying is we're tight, and there's no need to waste money. We wanted to fund SROs. We're paying $108,400. I see an SRO in there easily. And we need to consider that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in the past, I criticized the county to take in a full page ad or half Easter. When I asked Ms. Brock, she said, well, I didn't have anything else to put in here, and it's either we're gonna pay for it regardless, so I just had to put half Easter in there with no, or she gonna get charged for nothing. And that wasn't too good.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
So the motion that's on the floor is for the interim county administrator to renegotiate the
This
contracts.
particular contract,
Well, it's 5 of them, but so renegotiate the contracts, and you had the second in the discussion. I just want to make sure Mr. Martin has some idea of what contours he's renegotiating. Do you have any dollar sum that you want to cut off of this? Because it's been, I don't want him to go out and not know what he's shooting for, I guess is my point.
yes, I'd like him to cut out an SRO from this,
So that's
at least.
$60,000.
Yeah, that will leave us plenty of advertising money, plenty.
And that would, so we go down to discussion. No, I didn't mean to interrupt the discussion, I just want to make sure.
No, that's quite all right. But at the same time, we're going to look at all the rest of our advertising expenses. And like I said, I really don't have a problem with any of our legal ads. That is required by law, and we will continue to do that. And none of that is in this agreement. That is completely separate.
Do we have contracts with any of the other people?
We'll get those. What we have, we'll get those by next time, so.
Why do we have just this one? That's what I'm wondering. It seems kind of arbitrary to say.
No, it wasn't
cut this one.
arbitrary. You know it wasn't arbitrary. I know it wasn't arbitrary. I was curious to see how much we spend in advertising, and I was shocked at the total. And yes, that led me to ask the question to myself, well, what are we spending in total? There's a lot of documents that still need to be pulled. We still have another meeting next time, so there's plenty of time to get to that as well.
So we don't know what we're spending on with the other advertisers at this time.
Not at this
We do
time.
not.
So it could be more,
However,
it
let
could be
me-
less.
Let me say this, a couple of meetings ago, I did hand you all a document that showed exactly how much we were spending, and not one of you, except me, has looked at it.
No, I looked at it.
with that.
It's
It's
kind-
400,000 and $400.
I know, but it was also somewhat difficult to read, so we'll fix that and take a second look at all this. Okay, any other comments about this?
Again, I think if we're renegotiating contracts or negotiating a new contract with a vendor, in a certain class of vendors. We need to do all vendors at the same time, and also have an explanation of, number one, what are we trying to accomplish with this advertising? It's just like a business decision. If I want to reach people in Oconee County, and I want to tell them about an event or a new policy change or hours of operation, who is that market and how do I best reach them, and how much does it cost to reach that market? It's very basic marketing. And to say, well, arbitrarily, I don't think that we should spend this amount of money on this thing, with no explanation of how many people this ad goes to, how many pages are in the ad, how many full-page ads are available for purchase, what your impact and your penetration of the market is going to be. It seems very arbitrary, and I think it's inappropriate to try to renegotiate with one vendor without knowing what all the other ones are. And also, since we talked about other counties, what are other counties spending with their folks?
But other counties might not have the financial constraints that we do. I'm just trying to cut back so that we don't have so many financial constraints. I mean, we're fixing to hire, 6 sheriff SROs. That's adding a lot to our, to the taxpayers, what they're going to owe us. And so I'm just simply looking for some offsets in the budget.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I know 2 other people at Print that said they'd love to come up here, so I'll invite them to come next week and see what they can do about printing. They can print brochures, books, leaflets, anything like that. They don't distribute a newspaper, but they do printing. And they said they would love to have a shot at doing some work in the county.
That's fine. We'll
Do
be
we
happy to
post
listen.
these things for bid? Can anybody bid on these items? Or are we just gonna have people come to a council meeting and say, I'd like to do it too? Seems like we do that with everything else. We bid things out usually.
And that might be the proper way to do it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't tell you what has been bid, but I can tell you with what we've heard tonight, we're gonna look at all of it, and we'll have you all the information we can next week. We'll have a list of the contracts that we do have, the process that they were bid, or how we accepted into these contracts, and we'll have all that information for y'all next week.
That's fine.
As to the procurement question, I don't believe that these items were ever put out for a competitive bid of some sort, because it probably falls in line with the sole source type idea. There's not very many vendors who are going to produce what the Journal's going to produce, or produce what Northland Cable's going to produce in this area. There's not 15 of those. That's my guess. That's why it's not competitive.
I'll make a motion to table this advertisement and discussion until we can have the other ones in front of us, so we can ask those questions and they can be answered by not just the Journal, but other vendors, WGOG and Northland Cable and QE Courier and Westminster News that would come. And I'd like to, I guess, arrange a specific time period, I guess, that they can get in touch with you to schedule to stay on there, and they get 4 or 5 minutes to speak. That'd be my motion to table this along with that.
I second that motion.
This contract, it's not even signed, is it? This
No,
one-
we couldn't produce a signed copy.
So we're advertising without authorization.
What was the question?
Well, he said this contract wasn't signed, and Ms. Brock had called Ms. Schneider at the Journal, and she could not produce a signed copy.
As I understand it, we've got 5 different contracts. Mr. Moeller has had the ability to spend up to $50,000 per agreement. These would all be less than that. So I don't know that advertising without authorization. I think he had that authorization as the CEO, essentially Chief Administrative Officer or Executive Officer of the counties. So I'm not caught up with that. In fact, we've got a course of performance, part performance, where the Journal has done essentially what it signed up to do, and it's signed up to do, the fact that we don't have a signed agreement at this point.
Yeah, well, it's too late in the game to worry about it, but like I said, it's expiring June 30th, so we really need to renegotiate this contract and get it signed once it's renegotiated. Anyway, we have a motion to table with a second. All in favor of the motion to table?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. And so we still have a motion on the floor to renegotiate this contract. So all in favor of that? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Just make sure that we have as a corollary to this, interim administrator is going to engage the proper party at the journal to attempt to negotiate down $60,000 approximately off of this contract price. Naturally, that's not going to be binding, that's going to come back from budget
Sure.
committee next week. It's not a council action of any sort, and that's a work in progress. Plus, we're going to bring in the other potential advertising entities for next week's discussion. And Ms. Brock's analysis, however mature it is at that time, for how best to equitably spread the advertising, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, you had, our normally scheduled budget committee meeting was supposed to be next week, but you had requested we meet today. So there's something, I must have misunderstood you. Did you want to meet today but not meet next week?
No.
So you wanted to include both, you wanted to meet on both occasions. So is there something else specifically you would like to address tonight?
The 2018, 2019 budget.
That's
I
not
mean,
what
we
I
got,
meant.
as we have talked about the fire truck at $350,000 to include that. We've talked about the ADA upgrades, and we've talked about the magistrate in there as well, with no direction toward our administrator on what to do with those. So, yeah, I was kind of hoping we could discuss.
And also the 6 CROs, or excuse me, SROs, right?
Well, we've
Well, we already
agreed
made
on
the
those.
commitment to Sheriff Crenshaw, we were going to do that.
Okay, so that's-
So that was the .73 mil increase to cover the 6 sheriff SROs and
Okay. Just confirm
the deputy, it's deputy coroner, right? Is that the position?
That's correct.
Deputy coroner.
One of my main concerns is as we move forward with the pay increases, the total cost of that is $630, not the $320. If we don't include that, then we're gonna have to take the money out of the one-time expenditures that you're looking at, which is the fire truck, which is also part of our vehicle replacement plan that we're struggling to fund properly, or the High Falls ADA upgrades, and we're struggling to keep up our parks like we should. So it seems like we're kind of spinning wheels there. One of my suggestions to properly get this county moving in the right direction is to, as the talk has been, to fund an additional fire truck, not only to fund that fire truck, but also work toward the proper vehicle replacement plan. The amount of money that we're spending repairing these older vehicles is getting astronomical, and that's really gonna hurt us down the road if we don't fund that properly. And I do,
And what evidence do you have to suggest to me that the amount we're spending to fix these vehicles is getting astronomical?
from speaking to, we can have him come and present. I don't know all the department heads, so, but from what I'm understanding is we're so far behind on our vehicle replacement plan that if we don't continue to invest in it, it's going to be dollar after dollar. And I know we have some leases coming off, and I believe that's in 21, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
No, it's
correct?
2020, we talked about that. We'll have a lease rolling off in 2020.
Madam Chair, it's in the year 2021.
21
It's in
coming up?
October.
Okay.
So it is 21. So when we have that, but if we continually don't work on funding that vehicle replacement plan, it's gonna be an astronomical. I mean, the one thing that we're trying to work on as a council is to keep, every year, we're just barely getting by. And, you know, I think the thing that we work on as a council, we need to make sure to fund this stuff properly instead of, you know, we're very good at spending extra money left over, but it's continually creating a recurring cost of there. And it's things that I believe in as well. The fire personnel, finishing out that project, we are funding that with recurring money, which is good. And we are agreeing to fund the SROs with the recurring money. But as we move forward with the fire truck and, you know, upgrades, I mean, definitely the fire truck, that money needs to stay in there. And I was just, my question is where are we looking to get the extra $307,000 next year for the pay increases proposed?
Well, that's actually one thing we did talk about in one of our previous meetings. We were going to go ahead and pay for the Hyatt Falls ADA upgrades, but that didn't mean that if we raised the millage for that, it was going to stay with PRT. And we were actually looking to just then fund our raises with that amount, and we'd be pretty close to what we need to do. The fire truck, we're actually going to have to continually replace more fire trucks because something like 15, 20 years ago, 20 fire trucks were bought all at the same time and now are coming due to be replaced. So we will need to maintain a millage on that to be able to replace those fire trucks. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We also have a bunch of industry that are coming online, they're gonna be paying taxes this coming year. And we have that revenue coming in that we're not counting right now. So that's another bright side.
Yeah, we're actually expecting an extra $90,000 from Baxter this year. But we haven't factored that into our analysis.
They're also adding on, and they're fixing to jump over the road to the backside and add on again. That is a booming, growing company. They're adding on right now. If you go by there, the cranes are out there now.
The problem we really have, Mr. Davis and Mr. McCall and everybody else, is the fact that we have a very tax-averse electorate. And that's really what we struggle with every year as we try to balance this budget. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from them as soon as the public hearings start. So I think, you know, from my discussions with my constituents, no one has a problem funding the SROs. Anything related to health and safety, you know, from what I've been discussing with my constituents, no one really has a problem funding that either. But when you start talking about some of the other stuff you want to fund, new vehicles and that kind of thing, they have a problem with that. So I'm sure we'll hear from them as the public hearings. And there's 2 public hearings, right, for the budget.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of my to-dos. There's only one public hearing. It's done differently this year than it was in previous 2 years. I was here, I think, before that, where it was on an offset week where we just had the public hearing.
Yeah, we would like come in on a Thursday and have a
So
public hearing.
this year, the public hearing is actually on June 5th. That's the scheduled one, and the only scheduled one. I would love for us to have
We have to have a second one.
an additional one on the third hearing, third reading, so we'd have a second public hearing on the 19th.
Okay. So the first one is June 5th,
Yeah.
and the second one
reading.
would be June.
June 19th, that way it would capture, that public hearing would capture any changes that y'all made on the bid, and give the public an extra opportunity to speak. Assuming that's a thumbs up, we can go ahead and get that notice.
So would a new fire truck be considered part of health and safety?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we are gonna fund that?
Well, yeah, I would be comfortable funding that. I would be, comfortable funding the ADA upgrades.
Okay. So that represents,
And I'm also curious, the Chow Ram upgrades, are they in progress right now?
The money has been identified with the assistance of Mr. Blackwell and this council. But because we're in the middle of our season, we need our restrooms. So we are putting that money into a capital account that will roll over for next year. And our hopes that if you fund the High Falls ADA restroom, then we possibly could bid them both together.
You better make sure that doesn't end up in the fund balance. Council will spend it. I also think the magistrate office is of utmost importance. We know how much this costs, and Scott had studied it every which way to Sunday for years and explored every different avenue of retrofitting buildings, of building new ones, and regardless of whether we end up working with Westminster in a co-location of their city facilities and the county magistrate office, I believe this needs to be the year that we fund this magistrate's office. I mean, if you've not been there, you need to go. It is unsafe. It's unsafe.
In this case.
Yeah, it truly is a matter of public safety. When our judicial system cannot operate safely, then what does that say about our county? So I think that is, to your point, public safety, health, security, all of these appear to be necessary and related to those goals.
Do we need to decide whether Westminster's gonna do something, or we gonna do it on our own? We gonna get the magistrates off the ground, you know?
That was that 9-month commitment that we talked about doing. on
And
that.
as I left the shop this afternoon, no plans, no nothing, just a looming price tag. We gonna spend taxpayer money, we gotta say, hey, this is the building we're gonna build it here, whatever the circumstances are, a partnership or non-partnership. It has to be, we can't just throw the money up in the air, we have to say, okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and have a plan. We can't just say, well, we're gonna spend money and we don't know what we're gonna build. It's not fair to do.
That's
I
what
don't
they
think we're
want.
spending the money, we're just trying to find the money so we can build the building.
Where did price 500,000 come from?
Mr. Mulder,
And it
numerous
comes from the
studies.
same number we get for everything we want to build. We want to build a fire station, it's going to be 500,000. We want to build this, it's going to be 500,000. That's the number that tends to get thrown around. And until we actually have a plan, you're not going to have a cost associated with it. So you can say you don't want to set aside 500,000, and I would understand that. But either way, the idea was to fund it through debt service. So whether we build it by ourselves, whether when Mr. Martin and I go on our little field trip, we might find a suitable place and decide to retrofit it. Either way, there's going to have to be a little bit of money in our debt service to cover it. And I think that's what the discussion was prior. Ms. Price, on our bonds, which ones are due to fall off soon?
The next bond will follow from 2026.
2026? Okay.
We've got ourselves in such a, I guess, pickle with this. That's kind of why we're into, we've moved debt service over last year to cover operations, and we don't have any debt service to fund these projects, and that's why we're in the point.
And again,
not all this,
we understand that.
that's what I was saying.
Mhm.
Not all this is this council's fault. We're working toward, a resolution, rather than creating additional problems. And that's kind of last year, we did some things to make sure that we could get through and make some adjustments in this county, to get us back in the right financial, area. And that's kind of the things that I was looking at on there is just, we've got, again, 307,000 is going to be added into next year's budget. And, hopefully, yes, we will have some increased funding on there, but we're still not addressing, fund balance. And that's the thing that kind of concerns me is I know we can get into that talk if you want to, but I'll go back to my main thing here is, are we looking at including, based on what I hear, we're looking at including the fire truck, the High Falls ADA upgrades, and the magistrate. I hadn't heard a no. Do you need a direction with that?
Chair, if I may, yeah, it would be great, because what we did last time was you all had a vote to include the SROs and the coroner's position on the budget, so y'all
So
knew
those are,
those in total, and you knew that you had 0.7 mils. You could have a similar vote to address the fire truck, the ADA upgrades, and the bond service for the magistrate, which totals 1.37 mils. We can include that as, right, this is what came out of budget. We'll have a side note on the ordinance for the bid. Obviously, some things may change again on the 29th, but at least you have that motion now. Staff has a good direction on what the ordinance should look.
so what was the total for the millage? 0.73 was what we already included
It's
for
1.38. What has already been included was 0.7.
0.7,
That covered the SROs and the coroner's position.
and so the additional would be 1.38.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's a total of 2.08. My math is terrible.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do not want a tax increase, a millage increase, any more than anybody else. And the things that we have spent money on in the past few years are reasonable and, in most cases, absolutely necessary increases that relate directly to public safety. Unfortunately, we operate in a competitive environment, and we had to give the sheriff's office more funding for their payroll. We obviously have had to increase, things not in our control. We've had to increase school safety. As is obvious, it seems every week we have another attack. The state pension obligations, they increased what we have to fund. Of course, they increased what the school district and other municipalities have to fund with regards to retirement, the employer side retirement. Healthcare costs, that's been a bad one as of late. And that's not just Oconee County, that's every person in this country, healthcare costs are increasing. Inflation is occurring. A lot of these things are things that happen that are totally outside of our control. But we are the people who have to decide. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road and say, oh, we'll figure out next year whether or not we're going to buy a new fire truck or whether we're going to put school resource officers in every school. These are things we have to do this year. The magistrate's office is something that we have pushed down the road a long time, far too long. And these are things that are necessary. We're not wasting money. Several years ago, I was hopeful and optimistic that a reassessment would show, additional value growth and the value of our mill. It did not go up as much as we hoped. Taxes are, our revenues are not where we hoped they would be based on the spending that we had to do in the past few years. So in view of those things, I see it as our hands being tied due to economic and other factors outside of our control. The state has poured more onto us. Other counties are paying their employees more and making us compete. And our mill value has not increased to the extent that we hoped it would. Of course, we see great things happening in our county. We see new industry coming, more jobs being created. But it's not being done to the extent where we can avoid a millage increase and also fulfill our duty to these citizens to keep them safe, both from harm and also provide a good quality of life when they use the services here. So I'm not pushing for a millage increase, but I really don't see another way to do this.
Nobody wants it. Nobody's gonna stand up and celebrate it. One of the things that I'm still concerned with as we look down here is, every year we've got in excess that we're trying to go through our parks and upgrade our parks. We've got shingles flying off the roof, some of the stuff that people rent, and this is advertising our county. I mean, and when people come in here, I think we can do a better job in our parks, and that's kind of one of my concerns is if we're doing a one-time for High Falls, to me, these parks provide very, very low-cost entertainment for people. And so when we talk about the citizens of our counties coming in to our parks, it's a great place to take your family. There's no less expensive place and the safe to take your family than our parks are. And they do a good job at that, but we're not funding them properly for the things that they need. And as you've seen in our last two budgets, we've been hit by, several $100,000 of upgrades to that because we haven't maintained those. And that was one of my reasons for funding the pay increase fully, which would be $307,000. What would that result in millage-wise? Is that half, 0.56, something like that? 0.6? So.
It's 335 is 378.7.
And I know, like I said, this isn't our money. And every bit of things that we do, again, is to protect our citizens and give back to our citizens. And that's the thing that, I've heard people talk about the parks, and I've heard people talk about, this is the only vacation a lot of people take. It's High Falls, Chaw Ram, South Cove, Fall Creek. And we owe it to them to provide them the best that we have out there. I haven't seen sand on a lot of those beaches in a long time. I've seen some great things that we've done here recently, but they're able to do it with pennies. And I'm just sitting here saying that if we fund the pay increases properly and we properly fund our parks, my question would be, what could we begin to see in our parks for our citizens?
Well, we've also used ATAX dollars to do some of our upgrades, like the tennis courts at South Cove. Those are being done through ATAX money, and I think that's what it should be used for. So those people who contribute to the ATAX tax base can benefit from those funds.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Bill, how you coming on the program for people paying their ATAX when they rent their house out?
Oh, well, you just passed that this past week, so
Yeah,
you gotta give me a little more time to get that thing up going.
I'm looking for money.
I mean, that was just Tuesday.
Okay, well,
How much increase you already got?
None right now. It ain't started.
Was there some sort of estimate as to what you thought you could potentially get out of that, squeeze out of that?
We did have each vendor do a takeoff. The one we chose Liddell, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a little over $200,000.
206.
$206,000 that we felt like was a conservative estimate of what's on the table out there that we're not bringing in. So yeah, that's money that we could certainly put towards some capital upgrades.
Yes.
Our challenge is, facilities, but it's also our staffing. We're operating under the same staff we did in 2005, and our numbers are, we're bringing in $200,000 more now than we did 4 years ago because of the successes that we've had. So when you start thinking about PRT, in addition to just facilities, we're working our guys to death. We've got some salary folks and we're really challenging, so I ask you to consider that as well.
Any other comments, suggestions?
I got one more thing I want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask the sheriff, do you have any estimate on the last bicycle race we had on Saturday? I see we had animal control directing traffic. I don't think any dogs were pedaling bicycles, maybe. How much we spent in overtime and extra deputies for that event?
I do not have those figures. I can get them this week and get them back to Ms. Kamick to get to each one of you. But yeah, any of those special events, we pull whoever's available. So I'm sure there was some animal control folks that was used.
Yeah, I know you were using, I'm not criticizing you, you were using the best of your resources. But your resources, if you're watching a bicycle race, then you can't expect 4 deputies to be 2 places at one time.
No, it's additional personnel for a special event. We've got a certain number of staff that's available for calls for service. And if it's whatever special event is, then we staff it with overtime.
How we reimbursed the overtime, sir?
It's a line item. Oh, we're not.
You're not?
We're not reimbursed by the special event at all. No.
Then we need to look at this.
No, we're providing, whether it's somebody at Hillbilly Day, whether it's the fair, we try to have as much presence as we can at the fair, bicycle races.
These sponsors should be paid for your overtime and not coming out of your budget or wherever it comes from, Sheriff.
Yes, sir, but we try to provide that service as much as we can. That's kind of where I went with my increase. At any public event, we need a law enforcement presence. The first year or two of the fair, I think they did pay for overtime or extra duty because they wanted to guard at night for the equipment that they had down there. I think they did pay that and have continued to pay, for that extra security. I mean, they reimburse us for that. But just having a presence at these events, and some of them do. I'm not saying all of them, but some of them do pay extra duty. But most of them don't. It's something that we try to provide.
We were just talking about wear and tear on vehicles, so if you got a vehicle involved, the vehicle's naturally clicking the hours off.
Correct. Yes, sir. Now I'm trying to think. I can get a list together. I know Oktoberfest, they pay deputies to work there from the Oktoberfest. I think we've always just kind of taken on Hillbilly Day in years past of just having one person. Of course, that's gone from years ago. We used to have a lot more people than we do now. I think we still provide. I know in years past, the chief and I have actually worked Hillbilly Day ourselves just to keep from pulling overtime and using people.
We need to, as a council, we need to look at this because, these events are nice, but when it's costing overtime for the sheriff's department, wear and tear on vehicles, somebody's got to pay for the benefit.
Yes, sir. We actually, as part of our special event ordinance, I think there was a licensing fee in that, but that's minimal. But there was no, might could address it in that as far as something that's created an exception to the noise ordinance for special events, concerts and things like that. That may be a possibility to assess a fee to cover any requested law enforcement manpower.
Thank you very much, Sheriff.
I guess we're still hanging out on making a motion to include these other things that we're talking about. That's where we're at.
Yes, sir, I've not heard one.
Yep, did you make a motion?
I will be glad to make a motion, if that's what you,
These
so, I make a motion to include the fire truck, the high falls, and ADA upgrades, and, the magistrate as the debt service millage of 0.21. And that would be a total of 1.38, so we can move this meeting along.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? What else?
Is that for it? Just recall the vote?
No,
Just need to get the sheet after. Just so we're all clear and on the same page, but this obviously doesn't change the budget ordinance. Budget ordinance that'll be before you all for second reading on the 5th. Aren't any additional changes will include 0.7, which is in the backup materials now, have on the side so everybody knows. It won't be an amendment out of the blue or a motion amendment out of the blue. This additional 1.38 for these items.
I wanted to get a little clarification on the fund balance issues we work with, and if Rick, if you'll allow Liddell to kind of help me with this.
I think she's ready for it.
The issue that we had last year with the healthcare claims, we had $1.3 million, I'm understanding, an additional more than what we budgeted for. Is that correct?
In healthcare?
In healthcare claims cost?
Yes, we went over.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, looking at this year, it looks like we're going to be under, or so we're gonna be okay this year?
We're gonna be probably around
1.2 in excess, or 1.2, at one, in excess, okay?
1.2. It
All
has
right.
calmed down some, but we've had a lot of it.
Okay. So, I guess barring that, we keep the 2 million in surplus and the unrestricted but assigned funds for that reason to make sure we can pay our healthcare costs. We don't want to mess with that. Okay. The solid waste, there's 1.66 million in there. That's contracted to fix the problems that we are already doing, and it just hasn't paid out, correct?
And that is as of June 30th, 2017, and there's already been like 603,000 spent out of that throughout this year.
Okay. So, just so we're clear, we don't touch that money.
So it's 1.06 million, not 1.66 million?
It's like 160.
And so that will be a zero balance once that project is finished, correct?
I'm sorry.
That'll be a zero balance once that project is finished,
Yes.
correct? Okay. The cat bus expansion, that's a $300,000 match, and that was to add the Tri-County Tech Walhalla route, is that correct? Or is that just the Tri-County Tech route? Okay.
That's my understanding.
And that's a match, so unless we decide we're not gonna do that, that money stays in there. The 200,000 of contracted money that's in there, that's contracts that we've already voted and approved for, it just hasn't paid yet. It's not really a line item in there, but that's the excess of that 5.4 rollover.
Oh, the 229,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct, that is correct. That is money from the 2017 that we rolled forward into the 2018 budget that had been promised.
And that will be a zero balance whenever that is due.
And then there'll be a different amount there from this year for anything that has not been fully spent out.
Okay, all right.
So those are contracted for monies, so if we didn't pay them, we would be in breach of contract. If somebody said, hey, here's your new fire truck, we need the balance of our payment, we didn't pay it, we probably did truck, okay.
Correct.
Okay. So, and then the OPEB reserve, we have 1.2 million in there.
Yes, sir.
Is there a recommendation of what we should have in there, or what's the, because that's, I know that's the Gatsby, and I'm learning what that,
I spoke with our audit firm, and they said that we're one of the few that actually set money aside, because our insurance is a pay-as-you-go. We pay our own bills. That includes current employees, retirees, spouses, and that's how we pay our bills. So, no, we don't have to set that money aside. It does hit our entity reports as a liability.
okay. So that truly is the only cash money that we have in there, that we use for retirement situation. And we added to that, or have we taken away from that, or?
It was around 600,000 several years ago. The finance director prior to me had wanted to put 600,000 every year in there, but that's just not been feasible.
Okay,
We're only one of 3 counties that actually funds OPEB.
correct.
I have a question real quick on the topic of health insurance. When was the last time we actually looked at self-funding versus purchasing a group policy with Blue Cross or Aetna or one of those?
I'm not 100% sure, but I can get with our insurance and HR
Mhm.
and see when the last time was. It's been a couple of years, I know that.
Yes.
I have a question. On the health insurance, I've got people calling me up, county and sheriff's people and everybody. Why is it if you work for the school district for just a short period of time, you're in the gate, so to speak, and yet with the county, this is a big topic for morale with county employees. And I can't, understand why the school,
Are you talking about being covered when they're hired, or they're in the gate?
in other words, after they leave, they're not allowed to keep paying for their insurance. In the school district, what I understand, they are, and this is with the sheriff's department, and also with other our county employees, this is a concern with them.
Didn't that get removed? That got removed out of the budget at some point in time, a few years ago, that used to do that, because and I remember from the cost of it, I don't know what year that was, but it got removed out of there.
But they're hitting us with the school districts doing it, and we're not.
Well, they're a separate entity, Mr. McCall, but I still don't understand quite what they're receiving. What are we talking about here? What are they receiving that we're not?
Madam Chair, for me, I think, when Mr. McCall talked about Ms. Liddell, Ms. Price told me this is an amendment actually I drafted up a couple of years ago that shifted the requirements or the eligibility for post-employment health benefits and a post-employment supplement. This was driven by the excess cost that the county was incurring by covering an extra group of people who had maybe been employed more recently or had retired with less time in service, essentially. And so they were paying out more money, and this was a cost savings venture that Mr. Moore directed me to do. So I'm familiar with that. It was driven by the cost of the time So we shifted down and reduced the pool of individuals that would be eligible for post-employment.
And we said they had to work at a given date, it was like at least
Yeah, I
10
don't have it right in
years
front
or
of me, but
something?
they had to have been employed prior to 2005
Mhm.
and retired with 20 years of service to receive health benefits going forward after retirement. And then it was cut off at Medicaid, Medicare age, or
Mhm.
65, whichever
Mhm.
came first. If they retired before 2013 and had 20 years of employment, then they had the same post-employment health benefits that everyone else was receiving. It was that first category, plus they received $156, or if their spouse was with it, $312 supplement to assist with uncovered Medicare benefits. So that was the new plan that was drafted up in this.
Okay, so that's what might be different with the school district?
I'm guessing that's probably what's different.
Okay, I'll look into that.
They're not self-funded, to my knowledge. So,
That would be a huge difference right there.
yeah, but the cost, if you look at, the biggest reason that I'm understanding we went from a self-funding is the savings that we've gotten over there. And I guess you could have that by the next Tuesday's meeting, when what we've saved versus self-funding versus the old way of doing it is a substantial amount, if I'm not correct. Obviously, that's a cost, is a reason why that's no longer there. That's what, was, I guess, a budgeting. So. Is that all you have, Mr. Woodall?
Yeah, I was made aware that, not trying to put the sheriff on the spot, but I'm using Mike as an example, you get a good deputy, and he can turn around and go to a guard at a power company, and all his health stuff and everything. Mike cannot compete with trying to hold on to his great guys that he's got. He gets them trained up, puts all that time into them, and you can't blame his people or any county or any of our county people. You can't blame them. In the private industry comes along and says, we can give you health, that health coverage. We expect the sheriff or Rick or anybody else to do. Right? And that's why I didn't want to vote on the budget. I just put a no vote because I'm going through my mind, all this stuff is going on, and we're rushing into worrying about fund balance and all this other stuff, and we're forgetting the human factor.
I don't think we're forgetting the people, Mr. McCall. There's nothing that we're hoping to fund in the next budget that's a frivolous item, that's,
Our health insurance also. I've heard from so many people, I think the concern is the continuation after I retire, how many years we have to put forward to get to that point. So, and I guess I think I've seen the document, but I don't know the document, so.
Could they be given the option to pay for it out of their own pocket?
That would be up to us.
what do you mean, explain?
If they retired and they wanted to keep paying for your insurance, could they be given an option to pay it out?
Even Duke Power, you work there 30 years and you leave, and between the time that you retire and there, they have the Cobra, and it's $800-900.
Cobra's not cheap.
But that's,
It's like $1 million.
but that's the option that they
Yeah.
have. So we're not necessarily, in my opinion, doing something different. But the problem, and I think what you're trying to address, and I agree with it, is you're leaving people that have served the citizens in this county without anything. And so maybe that's something that we need to look at there is a cost associated with it. But I agree, health insurance affects everybody. But I think from a healthcare plan, from everybody that I've talked to, I mean, I've never had one person that I've known to complain, and I've looked at it myself, it's unbelievable. And in my opinion, it pays more sometimes than what it should, more than what other carriers, because if you start in, and I'm not gonna name any carrier, but if you start in there and looking at their policies, there's a up to limit, there's a for this and that, and you're gonna get into more, what we're giving them. There's a lot of great, and I hate to call it free because they pay for it, but you don't have these little co-pays here and there like you have with other carriers. So we're actually giving our employees, based on what I see, this is my personal opinion, better bang for their buck and more money to bring home than what you have through other companies around here. But I do agree we should look at that end cycle on work to this point. But you know, if you work 15 years somewhere, you're not gonna have benefits when you retire. I mean, it's and I'm scared for my children because you don't have retirement doesn't exist anymore for a lot of those guys. And you know, I think it's great the things that we do here, and a lot of the companies that we're recruiting here are doing great retirement and great benefits. Because a lot of places are just paying you. We're gonna pay you $2 extra. You're not gonna have any health insurance. You're not gonna have any retirement, but we're gonna pay you more. And that's kind of the environment that we're on. So I think, to me, where I see our insurance-wise is great, but I think we need to look at that end of, I don't want to call it end of life, but that end of your employment.
The gap between employment and where Medicare kicks in.
And maybe we need to adjust that,
So was what Mr. McCall, is what you're recommending is that they be able to continue to fund health insurance through the county after they retire, after a certain number of years?
They want to pay in for it, you know,
Okay.
it's gotta be a, you know, it ain't gonna be a freebie.
No, but actually it could be affordable insurance because
Yes.
Cobra is not affordable.
not affordable, and it leaves people without insurance, and I think that's a big thing. But I think there is a cost. I mean, obviously, based on what we pay as a group, when you get that many people on, and I think that's been the concern that I've seen with a lot of carriers is they've ended that, and I guess that's why Cobra's picked up $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 a month, and I think that's something worth looking at, but it is a quite costly expenditure.
Well, I think in most cases, they look at what the employer contribution is and what the employee contribution is, and then, you know, that sum plus extra is what amounts to a Cobra payment. So
As much as they
how much they can
pay.
squeeze out of you, but I think that's what we need to look at is what our employees contribute and what the county really contributes in order to make the determination as to how we can afford that. Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
are we getting close to finishing?
yeah, I know you don't feel good, Glenn, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We've covered the highlights of what we needed to cover today, what we left off from last meeting, so we can just continue next meeting.
I had one question. Mr. Mulder had stated that you had directed him on those recreation grants to put that in a grant fund together. And there's some concern, and especially from the smaller districts, which was Salem would be one of those, are really concerned with if they don't have that rec funding this year, how they're going to continue, and that would affect all of those recreation districts on there. But it's on 51 of 84, and I know we're continuing efforts in there, but I think at this time that would need to continue on as it has been for everybody's sake. Westminster, Walhalla, Fair Oak, Salem, and
50,000?
no, it was the standard is what we had in there, which was 10,000 for each district, and then as the rolling has been continued, which is the 12,500 in addition. I'm not so sure who's up for that, but I would think to make sure that these departments, as they're budgeting there's a lot of concern there with that, and it would be my opinion that we would keep that as it was.
Well, I don't
And
mind that sum staying as it was. What I wanted to do was, since it appears as though the state will be picking up that more or less extra 1% in South Carolina retirement, and once they pass their budget and that's finalized, that we won't need to pay that sum, and that will give us an extra 200,000 that we can allocate to some of these rec centers, but I think that needs to be in a grant form. It should be applied for. I don't think it should just be divvied up equally. But I don't have a problem with the continued as it is right now.
I don't think, there was never a motion to take that and put that as it is. It just was directed.
It's just, but it's in the budget, it's in the county administration.
Page 51 of 84.
Right, it's in the recommended budgets, it's right, like everything else in there's.
How did it get changed? We didn't vote on Mr. Mulder just put it, changed it in there?
There was a discussion, it was a discussion between him and Ms. Kane to do that, and that was the statement. It was made in a meeting, and it got changed that way. And for what it is, my thing is, I just want to make sure that at least this goes back to what it was. That's all it was. I'm not blaming anybody. I just.
They got advice from an attorney to put it, send it up this way.
What are you talking about?
Put it in a grant form.
What are you talking about? They.
Different ones, talked with an attorney, and he said it would be best that we put it in a grant form, and people would have to have stipulations to qualify for it.
Different ones being who?
And hang on a minute, we're talking about the amount that they've always received.
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing in addition.
No, ma'am.
And the amount that they've always received, we can go ahead and continue to dispense,
Okay.
in my opinion. And everything I've heard so far leads me to feel rather confident that we will have a few extra dollars to dispense. I think that 200 extra should be in a grant form.
And I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
So are we talking about shifting this back to the way that it was in fiscal year 18 budget?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And what was the
That's-
total sum on that?
62.5.
62.5, yeah. I
And
don't
that's
have a problem with
budgeted,
that.
that's budgeted as it is, and that rolling stays in there.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's the base amount everybody is expecting and everybody has received thus far. I'm talking about the extra monies we can potentially put towards recreation. And then I think it needs to be dispensed by a grant, by some kind of formula, depending on, how many kids are served, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something we would need to work on.
Okay. What's the lawyer thing again? I'm confused with
They went to the lawyer and asked.
Who's
about
they?
These people that went to the lawyer.
Who's these people?
They're people that wanted some legal advice. They went to the attorney and he told them that the best way to resolve this was to put it in a grant form. And he happens to be an old-time councilman. He's happened to be an attorney for the council. And he happens to have a business here in Walhalla.
Well, that narrows it down.
Yeah, no, it's somebody we respect and know. And yeah, I mean, that's fine. We will put additional monies in a grant form. How's that?
But we're gonna go back. Is there a motion on the floor to return this
I
budget?
don't believe there is.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we return it back to the 10 for 4 districts and the 22.5 that rolls each year, rotate.
12.5.
In addition, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
10 for 4 districts,
Yeah, it's 10,000, it's on page 51.
but I thought there was more than 4 districts.
There's 5.
There's
There's
about,
five.
so there's 10,000 each year for 4 districts, and, well, there's 10 for 5 districts, but that 5th district gets an additional $12,500. So the line item's 22.5 while the other ones get 10 each.
Which you're confusing when you're saying the fifth. The 12,500 rotates through the districts,
Districts,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Mhm.
just like it always is. That's not changing. So it'll go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, back to 1. So that's all that is.
Oh,
And there are 5, right?
There is
Westminster,
5.
Walhalla, Salem,
Fair Oak?
Fair Oak, and Stonetown.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, actually, it does not rotate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When it was set up years ago, there was a priority set up the first 5 years, and so we follow that priority moving forward. So 2019, it goes to District 5. So we follow, it's just a chart in our office. Year 1, year 2, year 3, but it's a different district based on that initial 5-year priority, and we kept that 5-year running priority.
Explain how they get that money.
They requested through our office. There's a form from years ago that said what it could be used for, operations, athletics, capital. The goal of the additional 12.5 was to assist with some sort of capital project, and that's done they each get an opportunity to do that every 5 years.
And you said that in 2019,
In 2019, it should be District 5.
District 5?
Mhm.
Okay.
so whose district is that?
Fair.
Okay.
It's closed.
You sure you don't want to go back to the grant? Ain't that your district?
Well, we'll take the money, but we want to go back to the grant system too.
Next year,
Hey,
yeah, okay.
okay.
Okay. Mr. Kane, you made a motion?
Yeah, my motion is just to return it to the same system that we're using in prior years, with the rolling.
For the 62.5, but not for additional monies.
Correct, we don't have any, yeah,
Well, hopefully by June 27th, when they declare their budget, we will.
yeah, but we can amend our budget once we know that we have it.
Now, second.
Give me a second. Okay, any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Are we good for this evening? I think we're suffering from information overload.
Very quick, Madam Chair, if I could, just as a placeholder for the next meeting, because I don't want to be as surprised as Mr. Davis brought up the fund balance, I've relayed to you all problems I had with the resolution and the old ordinance that are in place, and how that has been implemented, how it has been followed, and how it sits for this year. If we could just have that in your minds to consider for the next meeting, fund balance policy. The amount, how you want to implement it, how you draft it up, however that is. I don't care about policy so much as I just want to make sure that we have a clear, unambiguous law about it, and I don't think we're.
Well, why is the ordinance unambiguous? I think the resolution is ambiguous, but not the ordinance.
I believe the resolution is ambiguous. The ordinance dates back to 2004 and is somewhat poorly written too, though it does state clearly enough that you have 150% of the debt service to cover that fund balance. It's up to y'all if you believe that is good for this unassigned fund balance, but it's not real clear from my perspective as an attorney. The resolution is more clear. There is a resolution and it hasn't been followed. It doesn't, as I've said before, it doesn't repeal the ordinance. It cannot, the resolution cannot. So just things to consider moving forward, certainly because we have a section within the ordinance that addresses the fund balance policy and how you're going to implement that.
Okay, well, Ms. Smith, why don't you put that on the list, the to-do list for next week, on the top of the to-do list, we'll discuss that then.
What's been the change in the budget from the 2004 ordinance to this current budget? What's been the change? I mean, just guess.
$1?
Yeah, how many millions?
Let's not make her guess. Let's go
I'm just
look at
saying,
it.
it's, I mean, that's the reason why the resolution came into there. I mean,
Yeah,
one of
but they should have repealed the previous ordinance and put in place a new one, not make a resolution.
You want a motion to repeal the ordinance and make a new ordinance?
Not at this point in time, no. I mean, we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot.
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
I know you're gonna feel good tomorrow. All in favor?
Aye.